Joining me now on AI Leadership Lab is the CEO of Socure, Johnny Ayers. Welcome to the podcast.
Awesome, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Now, we're chatting here in Davos at the World Economic Forum. Kickstart with the elevator pitch about Socure, and then tell me what is the sort of biggest misconception you're battling this week up to and about.
Socure has built the largest and most accurate identity verification, fraud prediction, and anti-money laundering platform in the world. We service enterprises, everyone from the largest financial services and fintechs to the largest governments, marketplaces, social media platforms, and everyone in between. I'd say the biggest misconception, or I may be surprised out here at Davos, is with the proliferation of deepfakes, with the ease in which people can create and emulate so many public figures or even the average Joe. It's been surprising to me how little people have talked about trust on the internet. When you see age verification requirements being rolled out in countries, not just for, age-restricted, adult content, if you will, but teenagers on social media. When you see an ability to deepfake Elon Musk or Tom Cruise or, Donald Trump, it's surprising that more folks haven't talked about how and when and where you can trust a counterparty on the internet. And acceleration of AI videos, the acceleration of AI voice clones, the ease in which you can create a digital twin or a digital doppelganger. Maybe it'll be 2027 Davos. Folks will be spending more time talking about, man, we can't trust anyone.
I wonder if everyone's just given up. I hope not, but maybe that's possible. And you've been really strong on all the verification sort of questions. Are there some uncomfortable trade-offs there? You think across the tech world, people want to move fast and break things. I know that's a cliche, but they do. And if you want to get verification right, maybe we have to slow down. Is that one of the trade-offs we have to think about?
Certainly in regulated environments, right? Certainly in some of the mission critical systems in Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering, yet you certainly can have very little defects. And the impact is real, to individuals and society when algorithms do go awry. And so I think that there's absolutely a responsibility there in mission critical algorithms that are making, real life decisions around money movement and access to capital and access to jobs when there is a need to move a little bit slower. But I think there's also the opposite, which is a lot of degrees of freedom to research and acceleration. And how do you help your team get information faster? How do you help your team do research and prototyping, everything from building new apps in Lovable or Replit to, running deep research on, a new prospect or a team or a new market. There you have tons of degrees of freedom, but, those are areas where I think AI can have a higher defect rate and be tremendously valuable. And so, there's certainly applicability at Socure where we're applying each of these in different parts of the business.
And thinking about those mission critical systems, I talk a lot to folks who work at financial institutions, the ones who supply governments. They really can't afford to have big error rates. You're building mission critical systems. What sort of a couple of things that you've learned in that process about the difference between having something that works in a mission critical function versus just one of those wow magic trick chatbot sort of things?
Yeah, when we think about facial biometrics, before these algorithms are shipped into production, you are doing tons of back testing. And so it could be testing for accessibility. It could be testing for, racial or age or geographic, biases. And so, a number of these, we have quite large testing frameworks that we've been able to put in place. Certainly some of it is regulatory on the accessibility side and disparate impact side that for us, we do a lot of testing prior to anything getting deployed in production. And even after it's deployed in production, continuing to test and iterate and ensure that, we're making the most accurate decision we can.
And that sort of testing point you just made, is that something that you think any sort of C-suite leader needs to take seriously, that they shouldn't just be buying it and throwing the product at their workforce or their customers?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what's a very helpful buy versus build, generalizable answer. I think that, the famous euphemism of do the things that make your beer taste better, right? I think some of these, right, to expand upon that, right, is is this an area that needs to be core IP, right? And is this something that there are providers in the market that are to do this full time, it's where they're dedicated hundreds of thousands of people, right, hundreds of millions of dollars to solve? And so I think for us, we have a lot of unique data assets, right? And so if you are a financial institution or a government, you may be limited to only seeing what's inside your four walls, right? You may only see the behavior of that individual in your account, right? You may have only seen them a couple of times. Whereas, there's partners like Socure who have a massively larger data set, right? We see consumer behavior at scale, we see patterns at scale, and it's really kind of a combination of our ability to work with their teams. The insights that they have, the insights that we have, and really the combination of the two enables the best decision in saying yes more, right? In delivering world-class, beautiful user experience, but also stopping bad actors who very often, don't do things just once. And so I'd say, maybe the generalizable learning is, are there partners that are bringing unique data assets, unique insights or expertise? And is there particular technological breakthroughs that they have that, your internal engineering or data science or product teams aren't going to be able to solve? And I'd say those would be areas that, you would look to the outside, versus building internally.
Yeah. And I was chatting with Deloitte's global head of AI yesterday for another episode. And he was trying to emphasize to me that he makes a distinction between humans in the loop and something that he calls humans on the loop. And when we were talking about this world where there are more and more agents, and he was saying, okay, it's fine to have humans in the loop, but that can bring a lot of friction into a system. And what you really want a lot of the time is to have some humans auditing what's going on. So let the agents make the decisions, but then have sort of a verification surveillance function. Is that something that you see as a trend, or do you have a different viewpoint about where humans need to be involved in these systems?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things we've been talking internally, and certainly over the last couple of weeks, to the partners at Sequoia, we're doing a podcast about this a couple of weeks ago, but where they talked about, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of go-to-market was very sales-led, sales-heavy, relationship-based. And then, maybe the last decade, you've seen a lot more product-led growth, right? And then they talked more recently about agent-led growth, right? So where the agents are being set up to make software purchasing decision, infrastructure recommendation decisions, and, taking that as a path, if you will, or a pattern. I think in any process or any decision, right, if you have people that are setting up the agents correctly, and then giving the agents those degrees of freedom, that autonomy, and then you're just making sure they stay on track, certainly you can get way more scale from that type of infrastructure being in place. And look, sometimes the loops break, sometimes your connectors break, sometimes the agents, start working on the wrong project or go down the wrong path or start to create their own language.
No human has ever done that. There's never been an employee that ever went off the rails like that.
Exactly. And so look, I think, there are a ton of learning lessons, right? Where, the future holds humans having swarms of agents, right? I think even in the last year, you saw a human to machine traffic go from 1 to 2 to 1 to 90. And so that is only going in one direction where, we will all be kind of maestros, if you will, of our agentic orchestra, and ensuring that we are keeping them on track is going to be a major part of our job. I say to our team all the time, there should be no human in loop. It's not a thing. We should figure out how do we build, these kind of autonomous systems that can run on their own, that we are regularly checking in, almost going back to the factory line, if you will.
Yeah, and it's an intelligence factory line instead of a widget factory line, I guess. Now, if we think about your own company, what are the most human-like qualities or characteristics that you think AI isn't going to replace, that you really emphasize inside Socure?
Yeah. Look, there's a great interview I think that Ben Affleck did a couple of weeks ago, right, where we just talked about a lot of AI is just creating average, right? It's creating stories that already exist. It's creating facts that, humanity already knows, and that there's not a lot of creative breakthroughs, right? There's not an emergence of, top 1% of ideas. And so I think those are areas, creative ideation, new products, right? I mean, we probably file 20 new patents a year, right? These are unique, novel breakthroughs that don't exist in the world. We can use AI extensively to do a lot of the remedial mid-level work, right? The repeat work, the grunt work, candidly, even sometimes the work of a PhD physicist, right? But it's all on information that already is known. And so I think those like new breakthroughs, creating new things, creating campaigns or slogans or messaging, or these are the areas that I think we're going to see big breakthroughs. In our business, we get rewarded for ingenuity. The technology is moving very, very, very fast. The ability to discern between a human and a video feed, 2 years ago, you could see it with the naked eye. You can't see it anymore. And so the reward for creative problem solving and really ingenuity in how we attack these new problems, I think these are still very much human and are an area that, we're certainly investing heavily in. And then anything that can be scaled is a bit more remedial. We're definitely pushing into agents as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, maybe that brings us to a final forward-looking question about what is the year ahead for you and the company? Where do you want to be in a year's time?
Yeah. So, the fight against fraud is rampant. It's pervasive. It's in every industry, everything from banking to lending to insurance. We're seeing a tremendous amount of fraud at the government level, right? Anytime money moves, there are folks showing up. Workforce fraud, fake employees, fake resumes, fake interviews. And then look, I think the age verification laws and age estimation that's rolling across really the internet, I'd say the combination of these kind of different attack vectors across these different markets are keeping us very, very busy. And then I think the acceleration of video in terms of an ability to take your LinkedIn photo, a 30-second clip from this podcast, and then creating literally a digital doppelganger of you, a digital twin of you, creates this really difficult problem around how KYC works on the internet, how trust works on the internet. And so this is keeping us very, 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 very busy because at the same time, nobody's really job, right? No bank exists to stop fraud. No, gaming company exists to stop fraud. No government exists to stop fraud, but it's a cost of serving their good constituents. It's a cost of delivering world-class user experiences. And so we're having to spend a lot of time trying to think through how we solve all these different new emerging, AI-powered attack vectors across the breadth of these applications, while also ensuring you as the good consumer, me as the good consumer, are delivering or are receiving a beautiful user experience. And so this is a multi-vertical problem. This is a multi-geo problem. It's a multi-lingual problem. And certainly it's becoming a multi-dimensional problem. Yeah, it's a fun game where it's AI a bit on offense versus AI on defense.
And hopefully, and it sounds like it will be, a multi-billion-dollar problem for you as well. Or a multi-billion-dollar solution, I should say. Johnny Ayers, thank you so much for joining AI Leadership Lab.
Absolutely.